The Montana dawn broke harsh and unforgiving over the Blackwood Ranch, painting the endless prairie in shades of amber and rust. Thomas Blackwood pulled his worn Carhartt jacket tighter against the October wind as he walked toward the old red barn, his boots crunching through frost-covered grass. At 42, his weathered hands and sun-lined face told the story of 2 decades working this land that his grandfather had carved out of the wilderness. The ranch had been struggling for the past 3 years. Drought, rising feed costs, and a divorce that had taken half his assets had left Thomas questioning whether he could keep the family legacy alive. His ex-wife Sarah had moved to Denver with their teenage daughter Emma, leaving him alone with 800 head of cattle and a mortgage that kept him awake at night. As he approached the barn to check on the pregnant mare, Stella, something felt different. The usual morning sounds seemed muted, and there was an odd stillness in the air that made the hair on his neck stand up. Thomas had learned to trust his instincts during his years in the military, before returning to ranch life, and right now, those instincts were screaming that something was wrong. The heavy barn door groaned on its hinges as he pushed it open. Dust motes danced in the shafts of morning light streaming through the gaps in the weathered wood. Thomas grabbed a pitchfork from its hook on the wall and moved cautiously toward Stella's stall. The mare nickered softly, her dark eyes following his movement. That's when he heard it, a barely audible whimper coming from the empty stall at the far end of the barn. Thomas froze, his grip tightening on the pitchfork handle. The sound came again, definitely human, definitely female. His heart hammered against his ribs as he approached the stall, scenarios racing through his mind. Had someone broken in? Was this some kind of trap? "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing in the barn's rafters. "I know someone's in there." Silence stretched for several heartbeats before a trembling voice responded, "Please, don't hurt me." Thomas lowered the pitchfork slightly. The voice was young, scared, and unmistakably desperate. He stepped closer to the stall and peered over the wooden gate. Huddled in the corner, partially hidden beneath an old horse blanket, was a young woman. Her dark hair was matted and dirty, her clothes torn and stained. When she looked up at him, Thomas saw eyes wide with terror and exhaustion. "Jesus," he breathed, immediately setting the pitchfork aside and opening the stall gate. "What happened to you?" The woman flinched away from him, pressing herself further into the corner. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I didn't know where else to go. I saw the barn and I needed somewhere to hide." Thomas held up his hands, palms open, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. "It's okay. You're safe now. I'm Thomas. This is my ranch. Can you tell me your name?" She studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether she could trust him. Finally, she spoke. "Maya, my name is Maya Rodriguez." "Maya, when's the last time you ate something?" She shook her head slightly. I don't remember. Maybe yesterday, the day before?" Thomas could see her hands shaking, whether from cold, hunger, or fear, he couldn't tell. Probably all three. "Listen, I'm going to help you get cleaned up and get some food in you, okay? But first, I need to know, are you hurt? Do you need medical attention?" Maya's eyes darted toward the barn entrance, panic flashing across her features. "No doctors, no hospitals, please, they'll find me." "Who will find you?" She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her dirt-stained cheeks. I can't tell you. If I tell you, they'll hurt you too." Thomas felt a cold knot form in his stomach. This wasn't just a runaway or someone who'd gotten lost. This was something serious, something dangerous. But looking at this broken young woman huddled in his barn, he couldn't bring himself to turn her away. "How old are you, Maya?" 23. Thomas nodded, making a decision that would change both their lives. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take you up to the house, get you cleaned up and fed. Then we'll figure out what comes next. But right now you look like you're about to collapse." Maya looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Thomas thought about his daughter Emma, imagining her scared and alone somewhere, hoping someone would show her kindness, because it's the right thing to do. He helped Maya to her feet, noting how she favored her left ankle and the way she winced when she moved. As they walked toward the barn entrance, she grabbed his arm suddenly. "There's something else," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I have something with me, something they want." Before Thomas could ask what she meant, Maya pulled a small flash drive from her jacket pocket. "This contains evidence that could destroy some very powerful people. They've already killed 2 people to try to get it back." Thomas stared at the innocuous-looking device in her palm. "What kind of evidence?" "Financial records, proof of money laundering, human trafficking, corruption that goes all the way to the top of a major corporation and several government officials. Maya's voice grew stronger as she spoke, as if finally sharing the burden gave her some relief. I used to work for them. I was their accountant. I thought I was just managing legitimate business expenses until I started seeing patterns, following the money trail. And when you found out what was really going on, I copied everything I could and ran. That was 4 days ago. They've been hunting me ever since. Maya tucked the flash drive back into her pocket. I'm sorry, Thomas. By helping me, you're putting yourself in danger. Thomas looked down at this brave young woman who had risked everything to expose the truth. In that moment, he made another decision that surprised even him. Then we'd better make sure they don't find you. As they stepped out of the barn into the crisp morning air, Thomas scanned the horizon. The ranch suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a potential fortress. His military training kicked in as he began mentally cataloging defensible positions and escape routes. How much time do you think we have before they track you here? He asked. Maya shrugged. I've been careful, switched cars twice, paid cash for everything, but these people have resources. Money, connections, technology. Maybe hours, maybe days. I honestly don't know. Thomas guided her toward the modest ranch house, his mind already working through possibilities. He had hunting rifles, knowledge of the terrain, and the advantage of defending familiar ground. But against organized criminals with unlimited resources? As they reached the front porch, Maya stopped and turned to him. I want you to know, if they come for me, I won't let them hurt you. I'll give myself up first. Thomas met her eyes, seeing the steel beneath the fear. That's not going to happen, Maya. We're going to figure this out together. The sound of a vehicle on the gravel road in the distance made them both freeze. Thomas felt Maya tense beside him, ready to run again. Easy, he murmured, watching a familiar blue pickup truck emerge from behind the hill. That's just my neighbor, Bill. He helps me with the cattle sometimes. But as Thomas watched the truck approach, a disturbing thought occurred to him. How long before legitimate visitors became potential threats? How long before every sound made them jump? Every stranger became a possible enemy? Looking down at Maya, he realized that in trying to save her, he might have just thrown away the quiet, predictable life he'd been rebuilding after his divorce. But as her grateful eyes met his, Thomas found he didn't care. For the first time in years, he had a purpose beyond just surviving. The real question was, would they both survive what was coming? Bill Morrison's weathered pickup truck pulled to a stop near the house, dust settling around its tires like a brown cloud. Thomas felt Maya tense beside him, her body coiled like a spring ready to bolt. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, feeling the tremor that ran through her slight frame. Stay calm, he murmured. Bill's been my neighbor for 15 years. He's good people. Bill climbed out of his truck, his 70-year-old frame moving with the careful precision of someone who'd learned to respect his aging joints. His weathered cowboy hat shadowed eyes that had seen everything the Montana wilderness could throw at a man. Those same eyes now studied Maya with the quiet curiosity of someone who'd lived long enough to know when something was different. Morning, Thomas, Bill called out, tipping his hat. Thought I'd stop by and see how Stella's doing. Doc Williams said she might drop that foal any day now. She's fine, Bill, thanks for checking. Thomas kept his voice steady, but he could feel Maya practically vibrating with nervous energy beside him. Bill, this is Maya. She's a friend who needed a place to stay for a while. Bill's keen eyes took in Maya's disheveled appearance, the way she stayed partially hidden behind Thomas, the obvious exhaustion written across her face. But being a man who'd lived through the Vietnam War and 3 decades of ranching afterwards, he simply nodded and touched his hat brim again. Ma'am, he said respectfully, any friend of Thomas's is welcome here. Maya managed a weak smile. Thank you. Bill, actually, I'm glad you're here, Thomas said, making another snap decision. Could you help me move some hay bales later? I want to rearrange the barn layout. It was code, something they'd developed during Thomas's messy divorce when reporters had occasionally shown up looking for drama. Bill's eyes sharpened almost imperceptibly, but he just nodded. Sure thing. I'll swing by this afternoon. Bill climbed back into his truck, but before driving away, he rolled down his window. Thomas, you need anything at all, you know where to find me. As Bill's truck disappeared down the gravel road, Maya let out a shaky breath. He knows something's wrong, doesn't he? Bill's sharp, but he's also loyal. He won't say anything to anyone. Thomas guided her toward the house. Come on, let's get you inside. The ranch house's interior reflected Thomas's Spartan lifestyle since the divorce. Functional furniture, clean but minimal decoration, and the kind of organized emptiness that spoke of a man living alone. Maya's eyes moved constantly, checking windows and exits with the practiced awareness of someone who'd been hunted. "Bathrooms down the hall," Thomas said. "There should be towels in the linen closet. Take as long as you need, I'll see what I can rustle up for breakfast." Maya hesitated at the hallway entrance. "Thomas, why are you really doing this? I mean, really?" Thomas considered the question while studying her face. Dark circles shadowed her eyes and her cheekbones stood out too sharply, speaking of days without proper food. But beneath the exhaustion and fear, he saw something that reminded him of his daughter Emma, that stubborn determination to do what was right, even when the cost was high. "I guess because someone once told me that you can judge a man's character by what he does when no one's watching. Right now, no one's watching except you and me." Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. "I don't cry," she said fiercely. "I haven't cried since this started. Sometimes it's okay to cry, Maya. Sometimes it means you're still human." While Maya showered, Thomas prepared breakfast and tried to process the reality of his situation. 4 days ago, his biggest concern had been whether he could make the next mortgage payment. Now he was harboring a fugitive who possessed evidence that could bring down powerful criminals. His phone buzzed with a text from his daughter Emma. "Dad, still coming to my soccer game Saturday?" Thomas stared at the message, his heart sinking. Emma's game was in Billings, 3 hours away. How could he leave Maya alone? How could he put his daughter at risk by bringing danger near her? He typed back, "Might have to work, honey, ranch emergency, I'll try." The response came quickly. "You always have ranch emergencies. Mom says you're just making excuses." Thomas closed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight of guilt. His divorce from Sarah hadn't been acrimonious, but it had been final. She'd grown tired of the isolation, the financial uncertainty, the way the ranch demanded everything he had to give. Now, just when he thought he might be finding his footing again, life had thrown him another curveball. Maya emerged from the bathroom 20 minutes later, transformed. Clean hair revealed natural highlights, and without the dirt and exhaustion masking her features, Thomas realized she was actually quite beautiful. She'd found one of his old flannel shirts hanging on the bathroom door and rolled up the sleeves. It hung loose on her small frame, making her look younger and more vulnerable. "Better?" she asked, managing a small smile. "Much." Thomas set a plate of eggs, bacon, and toast in front of her. "Eat slowly. Your stomach needs to readjust." Maya fell on the food like she hadn't eaten in days, which she probably hadn't. Thomas nursed his coffee and watched her, noting how she still kept one eye on the windows even while eating. "Tell me about this evidence," he said quietly. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Maya paused mid-bite, then set down her fork. "Meridian Industries, ever heard of them?" Thomas shook his head. "Most people haven't. They're what you call a consulting firm. Basically, they make problems disappear for other companies. Legal problems, regulatory problems, environmental problems. They have contracts with Fortune 500 companies, defense contractors, even some government agencies. And the trafficking?" Maya's face hardened. "They have a subsidiary that provides specialized labor solutions to remote locations, mining operations, oil fields, construction projects in places where nobody asks too many questions. The workers sign contracts they can't read, get transported to sites where they can't leave, and work under conditions that amount to modern slavery." Thomas felt sick. How many people? Thousands. Spread across dozens of sites in 6 countries. The money gets laundered through shell companies, legitimate businesses, even some charities. Maya's voice grew stronger as she spoke, the accountant in her taking over. "I found payment records showing bribes to immigration officials, local police, even some federal agents." "And you copied all of this?" Maya patted her jacket pocket. "Financial records, email communications, shipping manifests, personnel files. Enough to put 12 people in prison for life and shut down the entire operation." Thomas leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed. "Maya, this is way bigger than just some corporate corruption. These people have killed to protect this secret. They have connections in law enforcement, the government." "I know." Maya met his eyes. "That's why I can't just walk into an FBI office. I don't know who can be trusted. For all I know, they have people inside federal agencies too." The weight of the situation settled on Thomas like a physical force. This wasn't just about helping someone in trouble anymore. This was about taking on an organization with unlimited resources and no moral boundaries. "There is someone," Maya said quietly, "a journalist in Denver named Rebecca Stone. She's been investigating human trafficking for years, and she's built a reputation for protecting her sources. If anyone can break this story safely, it's her. Denver's 8 hours away. I know. And they'll be watching for me at airports, bus stations, train terminals. The only way to get there safely is by car, back roads, staying invisible. Thomas studied Maya's face, seeing the hope and desperation warring there. Outside, the Montana wind picked up, rattling the windows and reminding him of how isolated they were out here. That isolation could be protection, but it could also be a trap. "Okay," he said finally, "we'll figure out a way to get you to Denver. But first, we need to prepare for the possibility that they find us here." Maya reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Her fingers were small and cold, but her grip was firm. "Thomas, I need you to understand something. If they come for me, you cannot try to be a hero. These people don't just kill. They destroy lives, families, everyone connected to their targets. Promise me that if it comes down to it, you'll let me go." Thomas looked down at their joined hands, thinking about his daughter, his ranch, the quiet life he'd been rebuilding. Then he looked back up at Maya's determined face and saw not just a victim, but a warrior fighting for justice. "I can't promise that, Maya, but I can promise that we're going to do everything possible to make sure it doesn't come to that." Outside, clouds were gathering on the horizon, promising an afternoon storm. Thomas hoped it was just the weather changing, and not an omen of what was coming their way. The storm that had been threatening all morning finally broke at noon, sending sheets of rain across the prairie and turning the ranch roads into ribbons of mud. Thomas stood at the kitchen window, watching the water cascade off the barn roof, while Maya dozed fitfully on the living room couch. She'd barely slept in 4 days, and exhaustion had finally claimed her, despite her hypervigilance. Thomas's phone rang, the sound sharp in the quiet house. Maya jerked awake instantly, her eyes wild with panic until she oriented herself. Thomas checked the caller ID, Bill Morrison. "Yeah, Bill? Thomas, we need to talk, now." Bill's voice was tense, urgent. "Don't say anything over the phone. I'm coming over." The line went dead. Thomas felt ice forming in his stomach. Bill Morrison was not a man given to dramatics. If he was worried, there was good reason. "What is it?" Maya was sitting up now, fully alert. "Bill's coming back," he sounded spooked. Thomas moved away from the window. "Stay away from the window, something's wrong." Bill's truck appeared through the rain 15 minutes later, but this time he didn't drive up to the house. Instead, he parked near the tree line and jogged through the downpour to the back door. Thomas let him in, noting the grim expression on his neighbor's weathered face. "We've got problems," Bill said without preamble, water dripping from his hat onto the kitchen floor. "Big problems." Maya appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "What kind of problems?" Bill looked between them, then pulled out his phone. "About an hour ago, I was in town getting supplies. Stopped by Murphy's store for some fencing wire. Murphy pulled me aside. Said some folks had been asking questions about your place, Thomas." "What kind of questions?" "Whether you'd had any visitors lately. Specifically, whether anyone had seen a young Hispanic woman in the area." Bill's eyes found Maya. They showed Murphy a photograph. Maya sank into a kitchen chair, her face going white. "They found me. Gets worse," Bill continued. "Murphy described them as professional types, nice clothes, expensive car, but something about them made his skin crawl. He told them he hadn't seen anyone, but Murphy talks too much when he's nervous," Thomas finished. "What did he tell them?" "That you keep to yourself mostly, but that I help you with the ranch sometimes." "Gave them directions here." Bill ran a hand over his grizzled jaw. "I drove straight here, but I took the back roads and kept an eye on my mirrors. Didn't see anyone following, but that doesn't mean they're not coming." Thomas felt the walls closing in. The ranch that had felt like a sanctuary this morning now felt like a trap. "How much time do you think we have?" "If they're as professional as Murphy described, they'll scout the area first, learn the layout, plan their approach, maybe wait for better weather." Bill glanced toward the window where rain continued to hammer the glass. "This storm might buy us a few hours, but not much more." Maya stood up abruptly, pacing to the window despite Thomas's earlier warning. "I have to leave, now, before they get here." "And go where?" Thomas asked. "You're on foot, in a storm, with no money and nowhere to hide. They have resources, vehicles, probably tracking technology. You wouldn't make it 5 miles. Then what do you suggest?" Maya's voice cracked with frustration and fear. "I won't let them hurt you because of me." Bill cleared his throat. "Actually, I might have an idea, but it's risky." Both Thomas and Maya turned to him. Bill pulled off his hat and set it on the counter, his expression thoughtful. "My nephew Jake runs a transport company out of Billings, mainly moves livestock, but he's got connections with truckers who run long hauls all over the country. Jake owes me some favors, and he's not the type to ask too many questions." "You're talking about smuggling me out," Maya said. "I'm talking about getting you to Denver alive," Bill replied bluntly. Jake's got a livestock hauler heading to Colorado tomorrow morning. You could ride in the cab, stay out of sight. These people looking for you, they'll be watching for a single woman traveling alone, not a trucker with a passenger. Thomas considered the plan. That still leaves the problem of getting her to Billings without being seen. Already thought of that too. Bill's weathered face showed the hint of a smile. I've got my grandson's old ATV in my barn. Four-wheeler can go places cars can't, especially in weather like this. Trail through the forest that comes out near the truck stop where Jake picks up his loads. Maya looked between the two men, hope and disbelief warring in her expression. Why would your nephew help a stranger? Because I'll ask him to, Bill said simply. And because Jake's got a daughter about your age. He'll understand. Thomas felt a surge of gratitude toward his neighbor, followed immediately by concern. Bill, if these people find out you helped. Thomas, I've been dealing with dangerous situations since before you were born. I'm not about to start backing down now. Bill's voice carried the quiet authority of a man who'd faced down worse than corporate criminals. Besides, somebody's got to look out for you young folks. The sound of a vehicle on the main road made all three of them freeze. Thomas moved carefully to the front window, peering through the rain-streaked glass. A black SUV was driving slowly along the county road, too slowly for someone just passing through. They're here, he whispered. Maya's breathing became rapid and shallow. Thomas could see panic starting to overwhelm her rational thinking. He moved quickly to her side, placing steady hands on her shoulders. Maya, look at me. We're going to get through this, but I need you to stay calm. His voice was low and reassuring, drawing on his military training. Remember, they don't know for certain you're here. They're just investigating a lead. The SUV continued past the ranch entrance without stopping, but Thomas knew they'd be back, probably with reinforcements and a plan. Bill, how long to get to the truck stop on the ATV? In this weather, through the forest trail? Maybe 2 hours if we're careful. Thomas checked his watch. Jake's truck leaves when? 6 a.m. tomorrow. But we'd want to get her there tonight. Let her hide in the sleeper cab. That's 18 hours from now. We need to keep them from searching the ranch until then. Thomas's mind was racing through possibilities. If they come to the door, I'll tell them I haven't seen anyone. But if they decide to search, they won't find anything, Maya said suddenly. Both men looked at her. Because I won't be here. Maya, we just established that running isn't an option. Not running, hiding. Maya's accountant mind was working through the problem methodically. You said the barn has empty stalls. What about the hayloft, or better yet, what about that old root cellar you mentioned? The one your grandfather built during the Depression? Thomas blinked. He'd forgotten about the root cellar. Hadn't been down there in years. It was accessed through a hidden door in the barn floor, covered by decades of accumulated dust and debris. Even if they searched the barn thoroughly, they probably wouldn't find it. It's not comfortable, he warned. Cold, damp, probably full of spiders. I've spent the last 4 nights sleeping in abandoned buildings and under bridges, Maya replied. I can handle uncomfortable. Bill nodded approvingly. Smart thinking. And if they do search the property, Thomas can act natural. Just a rancher going about his business. Thunder rumbled overhead and the lights flickered. Thomas hoped the storm would last through the night, providing cover for their movements. But he also knew that weather worked both ways. If these people were as professional as they seemed, they might use the storm as cover for their own activities. All right, Thomas said, making the decision. We get Maya hidden in the root cellar before dark. Bill, can you contact Jake tonight? Already planning on it. Maya pulled the flash drive from her pocket, staring at the small device that had turned her life upside down. All of this, all the danger we're facing, it's because of what's on here. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. Thomas took the drive from her hand, feeling its surprising weight. Such a small thing to contain so much explosive information. Maya, how many people are trapped in those trafficking operations? Thousands. Then it's worth it. They're worth it. Thomas handed the drive back to her. And so are you. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the ranch house, 3 people prepared to fight back against forces much more powerful than themselves. Thomas just hoped their small act of rebellion would be enough to get Maya to safety and expose the truth she carried. The real battle was just beginning. The root cellar was exactly as uncomfortable as Thomas had warned. Maya huddled in the darkness, wrapped in old blankets, listening to the storm rage above ground. The space smelled of earth and decades of stored potatoes, with an underlying mustiness that spoke of long abandonment. But she was alive, and for now, that was enough. Above her, she could hear footsteps moving through the barn. Thomas checking on Stella and maintaining the pretense of normal ranch operations. Every sound made her heart race, wondering if this time it would be strangers' voices. dangerous voices. The confrontation came at dusk. Maya heard vehicles approaching through the rain, multiple engines, car doors slamming. Thomas had given her a small radio so she could monitor what was happening. His voice came through clearly, calm and controlled. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" "Thomas Blackwood?" A smooth voice, professional but with an undertone that made Maya's skin crawl. "We're investigating a missing person case. We have reason to believe a young woman may have sought shelter in this area." "Haven't seen anyone," Thomas replied. "Been pretty quiet out here. Would you mind if we looked around just to be thorough?" There was a pause that stretched like eternity. Then Thomas's voice again. "You have a warrant, Mr. Blackwood. We're trying to find a very dangerous individual, someone who's stolen sensitive information and may be armed. We're just concerned for your safety." "Appreciate the concern, but like I said, haven't seen anyone. And I'd prefer if strangers didn't go wandering around my property in the dark." Maya pressed her hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. She could hear the tension in Thomas's voice, the careful control. He was putting himself at enormous risk for her. "We understand your position," the smooth voice continued, "but this is a matter of national security. If you're harboring this individual, you could be charged as an accessory." "National security?" Thomas's voice carried just the right note of skepticism. "Funny, you don't look like federal agents. Where are your badges?" The radio crackled with static for a moment. Then, "We're private contractors working with federal agencies. This is a sensitive operation." "Well then, I guess you'll need to come back with those federal agents and proper paperwork. This is private property." Maya heard footsteps, voices conferring in hushed tones. She held her breath, knowing this was the critical moment. Would they respect Thomas's rights or would they resort to force? "Mr. Blackwood," the voice came again, harder now, "I think you're making a mistake. We know the woman was in this area. If we find out you've been lying to us, are you threatening me?" Thomas's voice carried the steel of a man who'd faced combat. "Because if you are, I should mention that I'm recording this conversation, and I've already called the sheriff's department." Bluff or truth, Maya couldn't tell, but it worked. More hushed conversation, then the sound of car doors slamming, engines starting. The vehicles drove away, but Maya knew they wouldn't go far. They'd set up surveillance, wait for her to make a move. Thomas's voice came through the radio an hour later. "Coast is clear for now, but we're definitely being watched. Bill's coming with the ATV at midnight." The next few hours crawled by. Maya dozed fitfully, waking at every sound. At 11:30, Thomas's voice crackled through the radio again. "Bill's here, time to go." Maya climbed out of the root cellar on shaking legs, her muscles cramped from hours of hiding. Thomas was waiting in the barn with Bill, who had an ancient ATV loaded with supplies. "Trail's going to be rough in this weather," Bill warned. "But it'll get you there safe." Thomas handed Maya a waterproof jacket and a backpack with food and water. "Jake's expecting you. He'll take good care of you." Maya looked at both men, these strangers who had risked everything to help her. "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank us yet," Thomas said. "Thank us when Rebecca Stone breaks this story and those traffickers are behind bars." The ATV ride through the forest was a nightmare of mud, fallen branches and near vertical slopes. Bill drove with the confidence of someone who'd been navigating these trails for decades, but Maya found herself gripping the seat with white knuckles as they bounced and slid through the darkness. They reached the truck stop at 2 a.m. Jake Morrison turned out to be a younger version of his uncle, weathered, practical, and asking no unnecessary questions. He showed Maya to the sleeper cab of his massive livestock hauler, a space that felt luxurious after the root cellar. "Denver's 8 hours, Jake said. "We'll be there by early afternoon. I'll drop you 2 blocks from the newspaper office." As the truck pulled out of the parking lot, Maya allowed herself the first moment of real hope in days. She was going to make it. The evidence would reach Rebecca Stone, and the truth would finally come out. 3 days later, Thomas was feeding his cattle when Bill's truck pulled up to the barn. His neighbor climbed out with a newspaper in his hand and a grin on his weathered face. "Thought you'd want to see this," Bill said, handing over the Denver Post. The headline made Thomas's heart leap. "Human Trafficking Network Exposed. Federal Raids Shut Down International Operation." Rebecca Stone's byline was prominent, and the story detailed everything Maya had uncovered. Meridian Industries offices were being raided. Arrests were being made. The trafficking sites were being shut down. "Says here they've rescued over 300 people so far," Bill noted, "and that's just the beginning." Thomas scanned the article, looking for any mention of Maya. There was none, which was exactly what they'd hoped for. Her identity as the source was being protected. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Safe in protective custody. Testified to federal grand jury yesterday. Thank you for everything. You saved more lives than you know, Ems. Thomas showed the message to Bill, who nodded approvingly. That girl's got backbone. Takes courage to do what she did. Takes courage to help her do it, Thomas replied. That evening, Thomas called his daughter Emma. Hey, sweetheart, looks like I'll be able to make your next soccer game after all. Really, what changed? Thomas looked out at his ranch, at the barn where he'd found Maya just a week ago, at the land that had sheltered them all through the storm. Let's just say I remembered what's really important. As he hung up the phone, Thomas reflected on how much his life had changed. The ranch was still struggling financially. He was still alone and winter was still coming, but he felt different somehow, like he'd found a piece of himself that had been missing since the divorce. Sometimes doing the right thing was its own reward. Sometimes helping someone else find their way helped you find yours too. Outside, the Montana sky was clear for the first time in a week, stars scattered like diamonds across the endless prairie. Thomas Blackwood stood on his porch and smiled, knowing that somewhere out there, Maya Rodriguez was safe and free, and that thousands of trafficking victims were finally going home. It had been a good week's work.